it was never about making money or like having, stability in this way. It was more, I was fueled and I continue to be fueled by solving problems and people going, wow, this is really helping me. Thank you so much. I think you can't be scared of fucking up, like we screwed up a bunch of stuff while we were building this, but we learned a lot. It wasn't the end of the world.
That's product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I called it the product market fit question.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I mean, the name of the show is product market fit.
Think back to the last few months, the last few years as you've been running the startup. How many different founders have helped you out? The reality is founders help each other out. That's just who founders are. They pay it forward. So help a founder out. Take literally 5 seconds, take your phone out of your pocket and hit 5 stars.
Jordan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, so 7 Shifts is now massive. I mean, it's used by 50,000 restaurants. In fact, my brother-in-law is a recent immigrant here to Canada, and he got hired by a restaurant, and he started telling me how he uses this app called 7 Shifts. And I was like, oh shit, I'm talking to the founder and CEO soon. So you've become big and just prevalent, you know what I mean? You're just used in so many places, but it started I guess like all things, it started small. And my understanding is your dad was in that restaurant world. And so you kind of lived and breathed it before you ever started this company. Tell me a bit about kind of that story and how you kind of got into the space in the first place.
So my dad ran some quick service restaurants, Quiznos, and my grandparents also ran quick service restaurants, Orange Julius. So I grew up working in them, enjoyed those milkshakes early on, even if they weren't the most healthy, made with that powder stuff. But anyway, we grew up working in them, myself and my siblings, and so really started to notice, especially when working with my dad, some of the pain points that he encountered when it came to running his first quick service restaurant, and the scheduling, the communication, availability were just really prevalent challenges within what he was trying to do on a daily basis.
How young were you when you kind of started noticing this?
I was just finishing high school, so 18, I guess. And I'd been a big gamer at the time, so I was addicted to video games. And I just, and so I was playing some games, building some new websites for my teams on these video games. And it really taught me how to build websites. And even if they were really crappy at the start, I was using Flash, and anyway, Flash is not a thing anymore, but dating myself a little bit. But it taught me those beginning fundamentals of how to build something. And so without that small amount of learning that I'd done, I just thought, okay, well, I can just help my dad build something like this. And it's really straightforward. So that was version 1 of 7 Shifts, was actually called Employee HQ. And it was sort of a spin-off of the name. I think it was Basecamp at the time, had basecamphq.com was the domain. I'm not sure if the 37 Signals guys still have that. But that was the first version, which is basically allowing folks to all log in with the same email and password and then download the Excel spreadsheet that my dad would upload through the app that I had built initially.
And what year was this?
God, this must have been probably 2006, 2007, maybe. So really a long time ago.
And you're going, you're in college, university, while you're doing this, or what's the kind of setup?
I was still living back home. This is right before I decided to go to college, and I never had the marks for university. So I never got into university, the ones that I applied to. And so I eventually got into, I started dating my now wife and co-founder, Andre. She's also we went to high school together. She got a scholarship to go out east and to the University of Ottawa. And I was like, well, I can I'll try and get into a school there. So I got into Algonquin College, a multimedia program, took a couple of years of that. And the whole time that I was there, I was building websites for other companies, doing some consulting, trading projects with other classmates. I didn't want to do my audio project. So they're like, okay, you do my web project, I'll do your audio project. Sweet, nice. Great deal. So was always programming, was always tinkering with frameworks and new tools to try and understand them. I'm still fascinated by programming languages and the ability to build something with code. I think it's just so magical.
And so when do you start like really getting pulled to what then became Seven Shifts?
It was always just a side project I was doing, and my dad was the only one using it. And so over the years, I built some other apps.
And was he using it? Was he getting like real value, or was he using it because you built it?
I mean, he kept using it while I was gone, so
That's
I
good.
assumed that it was valuable. And so I got some jobs in Ottawa, working at some web design consultancy firms, and learned new programming frameworks, rebuilt Seven Shifts in like another framework. And, again, for me, it was a passion project. It was just really fun to learn something and put it online and see people sign up. And that was sort of it was very much bootstrapped. Like I would come home from my 9 to 5 job and I would work, 6 to 1 in the morning. And then I would get up and go to work and then do that again. And on weekends I would be building. And so
Building Seven Shifts specifically, or you're building many different things at that time?
building Seven Shifts specifically, because it started to get a little bit of traction. And I'm like, oh, my first customer outside of my dad was an A&W location in it was in Richmond, BC. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, I got to call this person. And I called them and I like built a bit of rapport with them. And, it was just really
Did you close that customer without talking to them first? Like, how did you get that second customer?
correct. So it was product-led motion, like early days. And it wasn't called product-led. It just, they signed up and I called them and, they signed up, they used it, they paid, and then I called them. And just learning and keeping close with those initial customers was really important. They all had my phone number. We chatted about a bunch of stuff, feature requests, support requests. Yeah, it was really cool. Just got to have this project where people were getting immense value. Like it was never about making money or like having, stability in this way. It was more, I was fueled and I continue to be fueled by solving problems and people going, wow, this is really helping me. Thank you so much. That's really what energizes me.
You think that's important? Like, I mean, these days, especially like startup culture is being what it is, like romanticized, whatever you want to call it. Like, there is so much of this. I want to build a business. This is how I started in 2013. Like, I want to build a unicorn, and then you go out and you try to do it. You hear like your story. You hear like how Toby started Shopify, how Zuckerberg started Facebook, and it's a lot more haphazard. It's more like I was just building stuff that was cool, and people started using it. And then obviously at some point you start, really kind of pushing versus just like getting kind of some pull. But like, do you think that is important? Do you think something is like lost when you overly are trying to create something big versus just building for the sake of building and kind of landing on a great problem solution set like you did?
It's hard for me to say. I think like everyone has sort of their own motivation of why they build something. And I'm not 100% sure like that you can say just because you wanted to get into it for this reason that it's a bad reason and it wouldn't work. Like I also, there's stories like mine where people are very passionate at the beginning of what they do and they sort of channeled that passion to build something. And then there's stories of folks where they were sort of like looking for problems and then they found a really big problem and then they were like building and then they got passionate over time. They weren't passionate that fueled the initial build. They were sort of like fueled by the problem and the problem space and the opportunity. I don't know if I guess I don't know if it's like a problem or just, different types of approaches. And I think that the one of the big things that I learned as we were building Seven Shifts is I still remember I was actually talking to one of the founders of Skip the Dishes, Josh Samer, and I was asking his advice on what we should do for raising money and doing these things and that everyone else is doing. And he just said like, well, let's take a step back. What type of company are you trying to build? And no one had ever asked me that before. And I thought it was a really important question. The one that I ask founders to this day. Should I pursue this path? Should I pursue that? Like everyone sort of feels like I have to raise money to build a company. And that's not true. The difference between like, oh, I want to build $1 million company or a $10 million company or $100 million or $1 billion company. Like those are just different mindsets and effort and all of these things. And I think that, I think that that's an important thing when people start thinking through what they want to build. Because you might think like, I want to build a massive company. To you, a massive company might be like a $10 million a year company. Well, for the investor that's writing you a check, they need you to be $100 million company. And I think just like getting those incentives aligned, even if you do pursue that road, is important. But I think also being true to yourself of what you think you want to do, what excites you, like what actually gets you really, really jazzed. And for me, it was just being able to be everywhere. Like I wanted our products to be in the hands of every operator since the beginning. And I still have this kind of unwavering feeling for that. So it was a reaffirming thought for me of what I wanted to do, but I thought it was a really good question.
How did you think about taking the leap from working and doing this kind of at nights and going all in on 7 shifts? Like, where were you at that stage? Where was the company at? And how did you think through that?
This is always a fun side project for me. And I figured one day maybe it'll make enough money where I could do it full time. And it was, I was excited at that opportunity. And I just remember going like, when I was in Ottawa on the weekends, I would go door to door it's funny. I didn't have a laptop at the time. So I printed off screenshots of 7 shifts on paper. And I would go door to door. I went to like Earl's and the Keg, and I was getting the IT guy, and I was like, check this out. I'd like flip the page. I'd be like, check out this experience. Wouldn't this be great? And I'd like go to page 3. And like I closed like 0 deals. But I think that I always wanted, again, to just like have this used by everyone that was running a restaurant and an operation. And so I think making the leap to sort of go full time and really go in it sort of happened pretty organically, which was, okay, 7 shifts is now making $35,000 a year. Well, I could live off $35,000 a year. Like I can't anymore because
Sure,
I got a
back
family
then,
and
yeah.
kids. But back then, it was like, oh, totally doable. I have a girlfriend at the time, like Dre and I were dating. She had a great career. Mine was like, peanuts compared to, her great career that was paying very well for where we were at. And I was like, well, I can go full time. So I went full time for about 3 months, rented an office with another buddy who was doing his kind of consulting stuff. And I was like, man, this is boring. Like I need to be working with a team. I love collaborating and solving problems and thinking through things. And so that's really when I was like, well, where do people build big companies? Oh, the Bay Area. Let's move to the Bay Area and let's see if we can get into a tech accelerator there. And so we applied to one. We did our interview with my co-founders, Trey and Johannes, who still work at the company.
So that's when your girlfriend joined you as a co-founder, like during that time?
Yeah. We were like, okay, well, if the 3 of us, like, are we going to do this? And then they quit, we got in. So then I remember closing the laptop after the interview where they said like, you're in. And then we like closed it. And then literally they were both like, well, I guess I'll go resign tomorrow. And they had to. And so we packed our bags and we moved to the Bay Area for a little bit.
Which accelerator did you get into?
It's called Boost. They were like a Bitcoin. They were just kind of coming off of a few cohorts of like a Bitcoin accelerator program. And then they opened it up to any type. This was 2013.
Okay. And how long had you been running 7 shifts, like as a standalone product?
It's hard to say like when it happened because it was always just like, it was happening for years before that where it was like a thing, but it was never really like when we registered it as like a corporation in 2013 because we had to, but like it was always just kind of like this thing that made some money for me.
You had what, like 10, 20 customers sort of thing?
We're just thinking at the time, like we probably had, let's see. Yeah. I would guess we had a couple hundred, like, yeah, maybe couple thousand customers, like nothing crazy.
All
I'm trying to
organic.
think
Though.
back.
I mean, it's not nothing. Like product-led growth with 2,000 customers on the side is actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, maybe it was a couple hundred. It's hard to remember exactly, but and like our pricing was different, but yeah, it was great. And I think going through that accelerator taught us something, and I think is really important for a bunch of co-founders is to like feel a lot of friction between each other to like get to the root of problems. Like we had some really good friction early on, and we talked it through, and it was like we were kind of stepping on each other's toes with certain work, and it's like, well, you're doing that. Well, I want to be doing that. And then, you talk it through and then you're like, hey, move on. But I think that taught us a lot about just being like very raw and candid with each other because we just wanted to get shit done and make it work. It also prompted and brought in some good questions of like, what do we want to do when we grow up? Or what is it we want this company to be when it grows up? Because we hadn't really defined it a whole lot. We sort of focused on every segment, like retail, healthcare, hospitality. We had all these segments and sort of said, well, let's just focus on hospitality. It's where we started. And I remember, I think a lot of folks were like, well, why are you going to target a segment that can't afford to pay anything? Like margins are so slim, the restaurants are super cheap. Like, why would you target that segment? And I don't know. I sort of always felt like no one's targeting them because of all these reasons. What a great opportunity. So yeah, we decided to build for them. And I remember even when we were in San Mateo, living there, like we do door-to-door demos with people. And like, that's something I think is really cool about the Bay Area is like everyone seemed very open to like testing things in a way that I'd never seen before. Like you'd walk into a restaurant, like I'm building this app and like, can I show it to you? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. Let's check it out.
Very different than the Ottawa days.
Very, very different. Like I think there was just more openness and, I think we got a few deals that way, but it was more just like getting validation on some of the stuff that we were doing than anything. But door to door never really worked for us.
And what was like, walk like that V1 or whatever of the product, it wasn't really V1, but that early version, 2013, like once you decide to go after hospitality, like what does the product do at that point?
Oh, you can just build a schedule with it. Employees can check the schedule in their app, post availability. Maybe, we had a wall that you could like communicate on. It was just a global wall. There wasn't like messaging between people. It was like the whole company saw everything that when you were messaging.
And what was like the competitive landscape at that point? Were there others or it was really just like moving from like paper to this?
There's still like 60% of people coming from paper and Excel still.
Okay.
But there was more. Yeah. It's like 80% of people were on paper and it was pretty crazy. Yeah. It's like only the sophisticated restaurants had tooling, but all the folks that were the independents, which is like 70% of the market, kind of felt like were left out to dry. They didn't really have anything.
And so, you mentioned like door to door didn't work. What was it that started working for you guys in those early days in terms of like distribution?
We focused a lot on SEO, like, cause I was doing marketing, sales and, engineering, server work and design work. Like we all sort of wore many hats. We saw an opportunity. There's no one talking about restaurant scheduling software. So like we just basically owned those keywords. We built everything around restaurant scheduling software and like everywhere. And so, that drove a lot of early traffic for us. And then
was it like a content play? Like you guys were blogging around this stuff or was it just more like website optimization?
Both. We sort of did both, but obviously like didn't have all the tools we have today. Like it was a lot of grunt work. No chat GPT to help us on that. But I remember Dre, like cold called a customer and they were on a competitor of ours and like we moved them off that competitor onto our system and they were like a 20 location juice chain in New York. They were moving all this stuff over to us and, they were sort of like, by the way, like you guys have time clocking, right? And we're like, yeah, totally. And we like hung up and then we're like, guys, we got to build time clocking like yesterday. And so Johannes and I, other co-founder, we just, we worked late, like building time clocking, time and attendance. And anyway, we built it in like record timing. And then, we were like, okay, we got this. And then we launched it to them. And I think it was like the next day after we launched it, it was like, we got a bug to fix and we got to fix that bug, relaunch it. And then like, it was just this nonstop series of problems with it. And like the next week, it's like, they're on Eastern time, we're on Pacific time. So the difference is 3 hours and they're waking up at their store. They're opening their store at 7 a.m. So they're calling us at 4 a.m. Pacific time with issues. And it's like, I remember like picking up my phone at 4 a.m., getting an earful of like swearing at me and just like getting beat down and then being like, okay, we'll get that fixed and like hang up and then go knock on Joey's door. Cause we were sort of in like this dorm setting and being like, hey, we got to go fix this. And he's like, oh, okay. And so we fixed it. There was a bunch of that, but time and attendance is used by like a large bunch of customers today in 7 shifts. And like, we wouldn't have had it had we not built that. And I think like, you can't be scared of fucking up, like we screwed up a bunch of stuff while we were building this, but we learned a lot. It wasn't the end of the world, but we did lose them as a customer, like a few years later, to one of like the massive payroll companies that are like multi-billion-dollar companies. And so I didn't feel too bad. I'm like, we can't compete at that scale. Again, it's more about the outcome of what we have today because of that work that we put in early on in those days.
Well, and part of it is like, obviously getting yelled at by a customer is not good, but it's not that bad in the sense that at least it means you're important to them. Like what you really don't want in those early days is unless customers just absolutely love your product and have no complaints, which is probably impossible. Like what you don't want is indifference. Like somebody that's really pissed off means at least you're solving a problem that they actually care about enough that the fact that it's not working is like preventing them from doing something, which as a builder is an opportunity, because frankly, if you fix that problem, then you'll be able to provide that value. But if they are not calling you and they're not complaining, then they're probably not using the thing, not relying on it, and you're like at best a nice to have.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how, like, walk me through kind of the ramp. Like, was this like a slow burn? Maybe even the fundraising history too. Like, was it a slow burn or was there like kind of insane growth? Like, what did those early years look like?
Yeah, it was sort of slow burn initially, and I think when we got into the program into Boost, like that's where we started to see, really crazy numbers. We were like 4xing our revenue year over year. Like we were growing quickly because we signed like a few bigger locations.
But it's small. Like you went from like 30 to like whatever, 120, 150K ARR, this sort of thing. Okay.
Exactly. And I think like and doing pitches and like pitching investors at like demo day was like really invigorating. Like I still love doing that. I think it's a lot of fun, and talking about the vision and talking about what we've done and showing the traction that we've got. But that was, that's when we sort of raised our first little bit of angel money. We raised about 150K US, which was like, I don't know, 200 and some Canadian at the time. So it was like, great. So we moved back to Canada, kept building, managed
Is that a
to.
small? I mean, even back then, that was still small. Today, it's obviously a really small round because the median pre-seed is like 1 million, but things have changed. Back then, was that median or was that small relative to whatever was happening in 2013?
I think it was like probably median, like the 200K between the three of us, like we weren't paying ourselves really at that point. Like, yeah, like 35K, like, they were like, my co-founders were like, yeah, I got like a couple months to all my savings that will like figure this out for. And if we can't, like, I'll go back to my job. So like getting 200K was like, holy shit, we can pay ourselves 50K each and like have some stability for a year. And maybe we can even hire someone like another junior person. And so that's what we did. We like went at it for, a year and or a few years. And before and because we focused on restaurants, we managed to attract and work with a bunch of, restaurant partners, right? So point of sale was a big thing, and Toast point of sale was just taking off. Touch Bistro was taking off. Revel, all these other folks were like, cloud point of sale was starting to become a thing. And because we focused on restaurants and we had sort of these visions around, integrating with point of sale, with the labor side, bringing in sales data so that we could forecast their sales more accurately and give folks this really holistic view on the scheduling page, that we actually built really great integrations with these folks early on. We were their first labor partner. And so we sort of wrote the playbook on doing these integrations. And then when these folks raised money and they grew, we were growing with them. And so integrations were a big part of how we grew as well. And they continue to be incredibly important to this day. Like
were those partners, like would they push you and they'd get a cut, or what was like the arrangement, especially in the early days with some of these like Toast or whoever else you were integrating with POS side?
Yeah, we have rev shares with a bunch of these companies, but I think early days it was more, let's just integrate so we can add mutual value to these customers. Like we're like 20% of like a, $80 a month product. Like nobody's getting rich here. Especially some of these larger payments players and point of sale players. But it was more about how can we really create compelling products that are very valuable for these mutual customers such that they remain loyal customers long term. And that's kind of where.
Because tell me a bit about like the thing about partnerships. Like partnerships are, curious to go deeper on this because partnerships are very alluring almost always. Like I hear about early stage founders working on partnerships all the time. And the upside's always similar. It's something around like distribution. Like here's a partner that has a lot more distribution than me. If I get access to all their customers, like imagine the opportunity. Great. The reality is most of these, like even if they get closed and signed, like they tend to fall flat. And for one reason or another, usually the bigger partner just doesn't do nearly as much as the smaller partner thinks that they might have done for them because they got a million other things they could do. Like in your case, this partnership strategy, like you said, worked. So I'm curious, what do you attribute that to? Like what went right? And maybe you have broader thoughts just on partnerships in general. whether it's structure or just something around them that, makes them work versus not work?
Well, I think like being able to co-market and figure out what the go-to-markets look like between the companies is an important aspect. Yes, you're right. Like you need sort of support on the other end of the side too. It's not just like integrated and they will come. Um, you need support on their end to co-market and have the reps talking about it. And how do you incentivize the reps to talk about it? What are you spiffing them? Are you spiffing them? Are you part of their marketplace where companies, their customers are sort of exploring and clicking on, and there's some exploratory stuff that happened there too. So yeah, I would say like building the right incentive structures, but also aligning the teams, like sharing a Slack channel. And I think that that's like a very underrated thing that folks should do in partnerships. Like just throw up a Slack channel and like get the key people in there, because like you want to solve things in real time and you want to like share things like wins in real time and, give kudos. And you sort of want to build some momentum around what's working and it sort of makes people feel good and it also like propels the partnership further. So, and we just invested a lot. Like we were very present at a lot of the partner events. So when they would do something with their sales reps, maybe we would sponsor it. Maybe we would go out and we were just so active. Like if you look around at our competitors in the space, like they all were like, oh my God, 7shifts is everywhere with partners. Well, that was the strategy. That was part of being really close and lockstep with them. Like they were an extension of us and we were extension of them. Like that's how we wanted that's how we wanted partnerships to feel.
By the way, on another topic, I mean, you were in the Bay Area, you went through an accelerator, and then you left, right? You came back to Canada. Why did you decide not to stay there and build there? Especially in those days, like these days, remote, blah, blah, blah. But like that was less of a thing back then. And I think the Bay had even more of like pull than it does, even today. And today it has a lot. So how did you think through that?
I'm in Saskatchewan. We moved back to Saskatchewan, all of like myself and my co-founders, and home. This is where home is for us. Like where our families are here, our friends are here. Yeah, we had the opportunity to stay there, but like something about building something in a place where no one thought possible, where you could manage to attract some talent and hardworking individuals that the only knock against them is that they haven't done it before, and be able to work with them on seeing them learn and be a part of something that could be really big and impactful was just like incredibly exciting to me, and still is.
Like, what do you say? I mean, just to play devil's advocate, what people would say is like, especially back then, is like, listen, you want the best talent. If you want to be in every single restaurant in the world, you need the best talent. The best talent, for the most part, is in the Bay Area. Like, certainly not in Saskatchewan. You know what I mean? Like, what was your thinking, and what is your answer to that? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think like, look, we still have folks that live and we like executives that live in Atlanta or folks that live in Toronto. So look, I think there is great talent everywhere. I think that what people underestimate is, I think the grit that people have here in the prairies. Like a bunch of folks here, like, their parents, like, maybe they grew up on a farm, maybe their parents grew up on a farm. Like, they had to just like roll up their sleeves and get shit done. And I think a large part of that mentality is like, there's not a whole lot of entitlement here. And I think that that's why a big part of me wanted to build a company here is like, you had to earn your stars. Like you don't get things handed to you. You didn't grow up in like some like rich household where you went to some like prestigious school. You sort of like just went to public school. We don't have private schools here in Saskatchewan. We still don't have private schools. So like there is this gritty, hardworking farmer mentality. I'll say that is like really exciting. And I think a lot of these folks can outwork so many people. So like maybe on a relative, like on a scale of like, hey, this person hasn't done it before. It's like, I would rather take the person that hasn't done it, that's 10 times hungrier than the person that's done it. And maybe is sort of like not as hungry. Like it depends on what stage you're looking for and what type of role for sure. But I think in the early stages, you sort of want like missionaries that like just want to get it done and they'll do anything to get it done. And I think those are the people that worked out at 7shifts early days. They didn't care what their title was. They just wanted to get the job done.
How many people are you today?
About 250.
And like fully like remote or hybrid? What's the structure?
So we're currently like mostly remote. There's like, I'm in the office right now. There are folks that come in and in our hub here in Saskatoon. We have a hub in Toronto as well. We do like Thursday lunches. So folks, you get like 40 people in each office come in. So that's kind of how we have it set up right now. And there's folks all over, Canada that work with us as well on a remote basis.
And then back to the storyline. So you'd raised $200K. Where does that get you? Do you try and get to profitability, or are you just aiming for the next round? Like, what's the setup?
Yeah, I think right now, like we have a really great trajectory to, get to profitability in a like relatively short time frame.
When you raise that $200,000 round, what's your goal with that? Like, are you trying to cross a certain revenue milestone? Are you trying to get to profitability, or do you raise another round? Like, what was kind of the setup back then?
Just grow as fast as we could and get as many operators on the platform as fast as possible and seeing success. And so we raised our seed round with Relay Ventures, who are based in Toronto. It's probably 2016. And we sort of joke, like it was an intro from the folks at Touch Bistro, another restaurant point of sale company. And I joke with our board member now that, like it feels like the only reason he invested in us is like, yes, we had strong numbers and we continue to show strong numbers, but he just talks about like how I would relentlessly fly to Toronto and keep them updated on our metrics. And I flew to Toronto like all the time, and I'd be like, hey, here's how much we grew this year or this month and this quarter.
How many times you do that?
I don't know, like a lot throughout the year. And yeah, we joke that it's like, I invested in you out of just sheer exhaustion, Jordan. Is like what I've heard.
You wore me out.
You wore me out, and the numbers were good, so we invested.
What were the numbers back then?
Man, I don't know. Maybe we were like $500,000 in ARR or something. Maybe it was a couple $100K. I can't remember exactly, but.
And how much did you raise?
We'd raised $1 million. Yeah, which was a big deal for us. Like and then we got to hire our first. We hired our first person that had a family. God, that was scary. It's like, oh, if it doesn't work, like not only is he out of work, like, now it's like his wife and kids. Like, anyway, that was a big moment for us where we got to hire our first family person. Yeah, we had to grow up really fast. We had to build a real company and show real value and just hunker down and do it.
And what was like, again, like as you go through, like walk me up maybe to the 0 to like 5, 0 to 10 million path. Was it kind of a doubling story? Because I mean, these days, like, what's the context? Like, these days you're hearing about these like 0 to 100 million in like 12 months, 0 to 100 million in 9 months, like just insane stuff. Everyone's trying to go faster and faster. A lot of the big successes, I mean, some of them were like that, but many were not. I mean, even like Shopify, which is a $100 billion company today, is mainly a doubling story. They just never stopped doubling for like a long, long time. So curious what like your ramp looked like. After that, like $500,000. I mean, it doesn't matter too much to $1 million, but like when did you hit $1 million, and what did things look like afterwards?
Yeah, I think like trying to remember like what happened after we hit $1 million in ARR. We obviously, we celebrated. Actually, I remember us celebrating like 500 customers. Like we had like a cake, like ice cream cake that we had and had 500 on it. And I think we did the same thing with like $1 million. Yeah, I think we still hunkered down and like made the product better, hired more people. Probably we switched offices to like a bigger space where we could continue to build. But like we were still focused on restaurants. So we were still hunkering down there. We also like changed a bunch of like really complex, like some architecture stuff in the early days. And, to tell another, screw up story here, like we had to migrate like a structure, and we wrote like this big script to do it. And we hit go on the script, and we knew the script would like take an hour to run. And one of our engineers, early engineers, accidentally hit the space bar, which stops the script. And it stopped it like midway through. And it was like, oh my God, what does that mean? And it was like, oh my God, we don't know where it ends. We just migrated like half of our customer base. Like, how do we start for we just like, we were like, oh my God. And so like the phone was ringing off the hook, like support was just swamped. Like we had like one support guy, like, and the rest of us were taking calls when we could. But I remember us like sleeping at the office. We had like Netflix on the TV. Like we were like taking turns, like looking to see if the script was done and rewriting a bunch of stuff and cleaning up a bunch of things. And I remember getting driven home at like 5 a.m. I like put my head down and then my phone would ring at 6 a.m. and I'd be like, I got to go back to work. And so I go back to the office and like, anyway, it was just like, there's a few moments like that building 7 shifts where it's just like, it was sleepless for like a period of time. And it was like having a kid.
And so now you're in like 50,000 restaurants. Revenue wise, where you're like getting close to 100 or like in that 50-ish range?
We're tens of millions in revenue. We're not at 100 million, but we've got 50,000 customers on the platform. We're used by about 1 in 10 restaurant workers in the US right now. And so, it's been a really, really crazy journey, fun ride. And still lots more to do.
Perfect. Well, listen, Jordan, we'll stop it there, but let me ask the last few questions we always end on. First one is like, and actually curious on this one for you, like when did you feel like you had like true product market fit?
I never really felt that. I don't know. I just never really felt that.
You still don't?
It was so gradual. I do now, but like it was so gradual, like throughout so many years. So, if I were to like almost think back and like where would I almost like pinpoint that, it would probably be like when we built a few restaurant specific features and had the restaurant point of sale integrations wired up. And we were like communicating with like the executives at some of these point of sale companies about like the integration and how things are going. Like I started to feel like, okay, we found our footing in that this is the space we're going to go after. And we've added value for these customers in a way that no one else has done today. And so I would say that was a big moment for us.
Was there a moment in particular where you thought that things wouldn't work out? Like when you actually thought you might fail?
Oh yeah. Yeah. A few times. You're sort of burning cash, right? Early days. And you've like hired a bunch of people. Like it's probably in 2017, 2018. I remember having like anxiety and I was like, what is this feeling? I feel like emptiness and like sadness. And I'm like, oh, I think that's like what people feel with like depression. Like I had never felt that before, but it was just like a weird, like darkness, I would say. And it was because we had like, a small amount of runway left. And I was just like,
what's the lowest that you had? Do you remember?
I think at that time it was like, we had like 4 months of runway left or something.
Oh God. Yeah, that's scary.
And I'm like, this is not fun.
How did you solve it? You just raised around or did you have to do like layoffs?
No, we raised money. Like we did it. And I just like hustled like crazy to do it. And guess that's what you do.
The part of start of life. And then the last question is, what's like, I mean, you speak, I'm sure a lot of founders, like what's one piece of advice you find yourself giving out like most, commonly?
I think that finding out what type of company people want to build is a really important one. I also think going through this exercise that we went through with core values and like we went through it a few times and reshaping it. The article is called like Draw the Owl. I think Jeff Lawson from Twilio's CEO wrote this article on how they did their core values at Twilio and the exercise that they went through. I think that's really important, especially early on as you're trying to hire people, because you don't want to like let people go and just say like, oh, like they sucked. Like you kind of know it and maybe other people know it too, but that's still not a great reason. And look, I've made those calls before and it's like, they weren't the wrong reasons, but it could have been so much more clear if I could say like, these are our values. This person didn't align with these values. And everyone could go, yeah, you're right. And then like, move on. And no one's kind of like scared about their job, like they're next. So I think that establishing good behavioral based core values was a really good turning point for us because it allowed everyone else to sort of, almost like see the value mismatch before we saw it. Or before I saw it. And you sort of want that. You want a strong culture to either attract or repel. And to continue to attract, you have to have the people that are demonstrating the behaviors. And I love the quote by Danny Meyer, one of my personal idols, and he's an investor in 7 Shifts. He's the founder of Shake Shack and Union Square Hospitality Group. Culture is the sum of all the behaviors you celebrate minus the ones you tolerate. And as my engineer brain, spins on that, I just find it makes so much sense. It just makes a lot of sense. It's like a calculation because you always tolerate some amount of behaviors that are shitty. No one's perfect. Like no manager is perfect, but it's like the output of the behaviors you champion minus the ones you tolerate is your culture. And so get the behaviors right and what you want to see out of people.
Well, Jordan, thanks so much for spending time, man. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
85% of people who listen to the show just started listening to it this year. You're probably one of those people. In fact, the odds are 85%. Guess what? You need to go back because there are over 100 other episodes that you need to check out that are just as good, if not better, than this one. Don't miss out.